The last few days have been absolutely massive for OpenAI, and I'm not talking about just another ChatGPT update. What we're witnessing is nothing short of a complete transformation of one of the world's most valuable AI companies into something far more ambitious and potentially dangerous than most people realize. When you start connecting the dots between billion-dollar acquisitions, executive reshuffles, a mind-boggling $500 billion valuation, and some deeply troubling safety controversies, a picture emerges that should have every tech, executive, investor, and frankly, every person who uses technology paying very close attention. OpenAI isn't just improving their chatbot anymore. They're quietly building what could become the most powerful technology empire in human history, and the moves they've made this week suggest they're accelerating toward a future that most of us aren't prepared for. Today, I'm going to break down exactly what's happening behind the scenes, why it matters more than you think, and what it means for the future of work, technology, and society as we know it. Let's start with the moves that really set everything in motion, because these aren't just typical corporate acquisitions. These are strategic chess moves that reveal OpenAI's true ambitions. The company just announced not one but two major acquisitions that, when you understand what they really mean, paint a picture of a company that's no longer content to be just an AI research lab. The first acquisition is Alex Codes, and if you're an iOS developer, you've probably heard of this tool. Alex has been one of the most beloved AI assistants for Apple's Xcode development environment. Now here's what's fascinating about this. Apple owns Xcode. It's their development platform. But developers have been complaining for years that Apple hasn't exactly nailed the user experience. So Alex Codes essentially became the go-to cloud-based solution that made iOS development less painful and more productive. What OpenAI is doing is pulling Alex directly into their Codex division, with the explicit goal of building what they're calling Cursor for Xcode. Now, Codex, if you haven't been following closely, is the backbone of all of OpenAI's coding products. It's already integrated into Visual Studio Code, it operates in the cloud, and the command line interface has been getting absolutely rave reviews from developers worldwide. By bringing Alex into this ecosystem, OpenAI isn't just improving their coding tools. They're making a direct play for Apple's developer ecosystem, essentially saying, we can do this better than Apple can. But here's where it gets really interesting. Existing Alex customers will continue to receive support for now, but no new downloads will be available after October 1st. That's not the behavior of a company that wants to maintain a standalone product. That's the behavior of a company that's absorbing technology to build something much bigger. This tells us that OpenAI sees developer tools not as a side business, but as a core component of their platform strategy. The second acquisition, however, is where things get truly revealing about OpenAI's ultimate ambitions. They're spending approximately $1.1 billion, all in stock, to acquire StatSig, a product analytics and A/B testing company. Now, if you work in growth, experimentation, or product development, you know StatSig. Their tools help teams run feature flagging, real-time decisioning, and data-driven product experiments. But OpenAI didn't just buy the technology, they brought over the founder and CEO, Vijay Raji, who's stepping in as OpenAI's brand new Chief Technology Officer of Applications. This is where the picture starts to become crystal clear. Raji will be reporting directly to Fidji Simo, the former Instacart CEO who just joined OpenAI as CEO of Applications just a couple of weeks ago. This isn't some random corporate restructuring. This is OpenAI literally creating an entirely new applications division, with consumer apps like ChatGPT and Codex on one side, and business-focused enterprise tools on the other. What's happening here is that OpenAI is making a statement that applications, both consumer and enterprise, are now just as important as the underlying artificial intelligence research. ChatGPT isn't their endgame. It's their entry point into a much larger vision of controlling the entire application layer of artificial intelligence. The timing and structure of these organizational changes reveal everything about where OpenAI is heading. And frankly, it should make every other tech company nervous. Vijay Raji is taking over the consumer side of applications, while Srinivas Narayanan, who previously headed engineering and oversaw the development of ChatGPT and the developer APIs, is becoming Chief Technology Officer of B2B Applications. This means that startups, enterprises, and even government contracts are now his direct focus. and he'll be reporting to Chief Operating Officer Brad Lightcap. Meanwhile, Kevin Weil, who was Chief Product Officer, is making what might seem like a lateral move but is actually incredibly strategic. He's becoming VP of AI for Science, spinning up a brand new team that focuses specifically on medical and bioscience applications. If this reminds you of DeepMind's AlphaFold project, you're absolutely right to make that connection. OpenAI clearly wants their own AI for Science track, and they're putting serious executive talent behind it. What's remarkable about this restructuring is how it positions OpenAI to compete directly across multiple fronts simultaneously. They're not just building better AI models anymore. They're building the infrastructure to deploy those models across every conceivable use case, from individual consumers to Fortune 500 companies to cutting-edge scientific research. This is the organizational structure of a company that believes it can and should own the entire AI ecosystem. The fact that they're making these moves now, while their valuation is at an all-time high and investor attention is at its peak, suggests they understand they have a window of opportunity that may not stay open forever. They're using their current momentum to build something that will be incredibly difficult for competitors to match. Now let's talk about the number that should make everyone stop and think about what's really happening here. CNBC just reported that OpenAI is expanding their secondary share sale from $6 billion to $10.3 billion. This is current, and former employees cashing out their stock to investors like SoftBank, Dragoneer, Thrive Capital, Abu Dhabi's MGX, and T. Rowe Price. The valuation for this deal? $500 billion. $500 billion. To put this in perspective, earlier this year OpenAI was valued at $300 billion. In just a few months, that number has increased by over 60%. This is one of the largest private valuations in technology history, and it's worth understanding exactly what it means. When we compare this to public companies, we're talking about a valuation that puts OpenAI at roughly 1/6 the size of Microsoft, which currently trades at around $3 trillion, or about 1/4 the size of Google's parent company Alphabet, which is valued at approximately $2 trillion. This means that private investors are betting that OpenAI, a company that hasn't even gone public yet, is worth more than most of the Fortune 500. But here's what's really important to understand about this valuation. It's not based on current revenue. OpenAI is estimated to be generating somewhere between $2 and $3 billion in annual revenue, which means they're trading at a price-to-sales ratio of roughly 160 to 250 times revenue. To put that in context, Microsoft trades at about 10 times revenue, and Google trades at about 5 times revenue. So why are sophisticated investors willing to pay such an extraordinary premium? I believe there are 3 primary reasons, and understanding them is crucial to grasping what's really at stake here. First, the total addressable market for artificial intelligence is projected to reach $1.8 trillion by 2030. If OpenAI can capture even 10% of that market, they're looking at $180 billion in annual revenue, which would justify today's valuation. Second, OpenAI has what appears to be a significant first-mover advantage. They're not just ahead in terms of technology. They've built substantial moats around their business through exclusive partnerships, talent acquisition, and brand recognition that will be extremely difficult for competitors to overcome. Third, and perhaps most importantly, investors aren't just betting on OpenAI as a product company. They're betting on OpenAI as a platform company that will enable an entire ecosystem of AI-powered applications and services. If they're right, OpenAI won't just be a participant in the AI revolution. They'll be the infrastructure that makes it possible. However, I have to be honest with you. These kinds of valuations also carry enormous risks. We've seen this before in technology history during the dot-com boom, where companies with minimal revenue commanded astronomical valuations based on potential rather than performance. The question is whether artificial intelligence represents a genuine technological revolution that justifies these numbers, or whether we're witnessing another speculative bubble that will eventually burst. Here's where things get really fascinating and potentially problematic for everyone involved. OpenAI is now positioning itself in a way that could directly challenge Microsoft, which happens to be their biggest partner and investor. Microsoft has invested over $13 billion in OpenAI, and has been integrating OpenAI's technology throughout their entire product suite. From Office to Azure to Windows, Microsoft's bread and butter has always been enterprise applications: Office 365, Dynamics, Teams, SharePoint. These are the products that generate hundreds of billions in revenue for Microsoft every year. But now OpenAI is building a dedicated B2B applications division, staffed with billion-dollar acquisitions and led by top-tier talent who have experience scaling consumer and enterprise products. Let me break down the competitive dynamics that are emerging. Microsoft's strengths include their massive Office 365 ecosystem with hundreds of millions of users, established enterprise relationships that go back decades, the Azure cloud infrastructure that powers much of the internet, and arguably the most effective enterprise sales machine in the technology industry. OpenAI's advantages include clear technology leadership in artificial intelligence, incredibly strong brand recognition especially among younger users and developers, the agility and speed of decision-making that comes with being a private company, and increasingly direct relationships with developers and enterprise customers that bypass Microsoft entirely. What I think is going to happen over the next 2 to 3 years is that we'll see increasing tension between these two companies. Satya Nadella and Sam Altman may be all smiles in public today, but the fundamental dynamics of competition in enterprise AI make conflict almost inevitable. Microsoft needs OpenAI's technology to remain competitive, but OpenAI is increasingly building products that compete directly with Microsoft's most profitable business lines. This creates what economists call a prisoner's dilemma. Both companies benefit from cooperation, but both also have incentives to defect and compete directly. My prediction is that this partnership will become increasingly strained as OpenAI builds out their enterprise capabilities and Microsoft realizes that they're essentially funding their own competition. The broader implication is that we may be witnessing the early stages of a complete reshuffling of power in the technology industry. For the past 2 decades, Microsoft, Google, Apple, and Amazon have been the undisputed leaders in enterprise and consumer technology. OpenAI's rise suggests that artificial intelligence may be such a fundamental shift that it creates opportunities for entirely new players to challenge the established order. But OpenAI's rapid expansion isn't happening in a vacuum, and they're facing some of the most serious challenges any technology company has ever confronted around safety and responsibility. The controversies that have emerged recently aren't just public relations problems. They're fundamental questions about whether artificial intelligence can be deployed safely at scale. A California family is currently suing OpenAI for wrongful death after their 16-year-old son, Adam Rain, died by suicide. The family claims that ChatGPT validated his most harmful thoughts instead of steering him toward help. They've included actual chat logs in their lawsuit that show their son sharing deeply troubling thoughts with the AI system. And their lawyer has accused OpenAI of negligence, calling for the product to be taken down entirely. This case isn't isolated. The Wall Street Journal recently reported on a man named Stein Erik Solberg, who used ChatGPT to feed his paranoia and delusions until the situation escalated to the point where he killed his mother and then took his own life. These aren't edge cases or isolated incidents. They're examples of what happens when powerful AI systems interact with vulnerable people without adequate safeguards. OpenAI's response has been to rush the development of parental controls and new safety features. They're planning to link teen accounts to parent accounts, give parents the ability to disable memory and chat history, and send notifications if the system detects acute distress. They've said that expert input from mental health and youth development specialists will shape these features. They're also implementing what they call reasoning models, like GPT-5 thinking, which they claim are more resilient against hostile or dangerous prompts. The idea is that if a user is in distress, the system can automatically switch to a safer, more thoughtful model regardless of which one they originally selected. But here's what concerns me about this approach. These are reactive measures, not proactive solutions. OpenAI is essentially admitting that their current systems can cause harm, and they're trying to build safeguards after the fact, rather than designing safety into the system from the beginning. This gets to a fundamental tension that I think will define the next phase of AI development. On one hand, OpenAI is building out a massive applications empire and positioning themselves to capture hundreds of billions of dollars in value. On the other hand, they're scrambling to make their core technology safe enough for widespread deployment, especially among vulnerable populations. The question that keeps me up at night is whether these two goals are actually compatible. Can you move fast and break things when the things you might break are people's lives? Can you scale artificial intelligence to hundreds of millions or billions of users while maintaining the level of care and attention that safety requires? I don't think OpenAI has answered these questions yet, and I'm not sure anyone in the industry has. But what's clear is that if they want to own the application layer of artificial intelligence, they need to solve the safety problem, not just manage it. And that may be a much harder challenge than building better AI models. While OpenAI is dealing with these larger strategic and safety challenges, they're also making smaller moves that reveal a lot about how they think about growth and market dynamics. Just this week, they announced that projects, a feature that was previously exclusive to paid ChatGPT users, is now available to everyone for free. Projects essentially act like folders for your conversations with ChatGPT, but they're much more sophisticated than that. You can set custom instructions for how the AI responds, limit what files it can access, and upload reference material that shapes the AI's behavior. Free users can now add up to 5 files per project, paid subscribers get 25, and pro subscribers get 40. You can even customize the project's color and icon on the surface. This looks like a nice perk for free users, but it's actually a sophisticated growth strategy that reveals how OpenAI thinks about user acquisition and retention. They've done this before with features like Deep Research and ChatGPT Voice, which both started as paid features, and then trickled down to free users with tighter usage limits. What's really happening here is a classic freemium playbook executed at massive scale. OpenAI gives people a taste of premium functionality to demonstrate value, then creates friction points that nudge users toward paid subscriptions. But there's something more sophisticated happening than just typical freemium tactics. By giving free users access to projects, OpenAI is collecting enormous amounts of data about how people actually want to use AI in their daily lives. They're learning which types of custom instructions are most popular, what kinds of files people upload, and how different user segments interact with more advanced features. This data becomes incredibly valuable for product development and for training future AI models. The timing is also revealing. They're expanding free features while simultaneously building out their enterprise applications division and raising money at a $500 billion valuation. This suggests they're playing a long-term game, where consumer user growth and enterprise revenue growth are both important to their ultimate strategy. What I think is happening is that OpenAI is using consumer growth to build a moat around their business that will be incredibly difficult for competitors to overcome. The more people who become accustomed to using ChatGPT for daily tasks, the harder it becomes for competitors to dislodge them. Even if those competitors have better technology, this consumer strategy also feeds directly into their enterprise ambitions. When employees at large companies are already familiar with ChatGPT from personal use, it becomes much easier to sell enterprise solutions to those companies. OpenAI is essentially using consumer adoption to create enterprise demand. What's happening with OpenAI isn't occurring in isolation, and the responses from their competitors reveal just how seriously everyone is taking this challenge. The entire technology industry is being forced to respond to OpenAI's moves, and the strategies they're choosing tell us a lot about where this is all heading. Google has been particularly aggressive in pushing Gemini, their AI competitor to ChatGPT. They're integrating AI deeply into Search, Gmail, Google Docs, and the entire Workspace suite. Google's advantage is their massive infrastructure and their unparalleled access to data, but they're also facing the innovator's dilemma. Their existing business model depends on search advertising, and truly advanced AI could potentially disrupt that model. Anthropic, the company behind Claude, is taking a different approach by focusing heavily on AI safety and what they call constitutional AI. They have significant backing from Amazon, and they're positioning themselves as the responsible alternative. To OpenAI, this is smart positioning, especially given the safety controversies that OpenAI is facing. But it's unclear whether enterprise customers will prioritize safety over capability when making purchasing decisions. Meta is pursuing an open-source strategy with their Llama models, integrating AI throughout their social media platforms, and betting that their massive user base gives them a sustainable advantage. Their approach is interesting because they're essentially commoditizing AI technology while trying to build competitive advantages in distribution and application. But here's what's really interesting about the competitive dynamics. Most of these companies are essentially playing defense against OpenAI rather than pursuing fundamentally different strategies. They're building their own large language models, their own enterprise applications, and their own consumer AI products. This suggests that OpenAI has defined the battlefield, and everyone else is being forced to compete on OpenAI's terms. The startup ecosystem is facing an even more challenging situation. AI startups are confronting a fundamental strategic choice. They can try to compete directly with OpenAI, which is extremely difficult given OpenAI's advantages in data, compute resources, and talent acquisition. They can build applications on top of OpenAI's technology, which creates dependency and the risk of being commoditized, or they can find niche areas where they can build sustainable competitive advantages. What I think we're going to see over the next 2 years is a massive wave of consolidation in the AI startup space. Companies that don't have clear differentiation or sustainable competitive advantages are going to struggle to raise capital and attract talent. The companies that survive will either be acquired by larger players or will find ways to build defensible positions in specific verticals or use cases. This has broader implications for innovation in the technology industry. If OpenAI and a few other large players capture most of the value in artificial intelligence, it could lead to less experimentation and innovation overall. On the other hand, if AI becomes a platform that enables thousands of new applications and business models, it could lead to an unprecedented period of innovation and entrepreneurship. The rise of OpenAI and artificial intelligence more broadly isn't just a technology story, or even just a business story. It's fundamentally an economic story about how work, productivity, and value creation are going to change over the next decade. McKinsey estimates that AI could increase global productivity by 10 to 14% by 2030. To put that in perspective, that's equivalent to adding several $1 trillion to global economic output every year. But the benefits of this productivity increase are not going to be distributed evenly across industries, companies, or workers. Let me be specific about which jobs and industries are most likely to be affected. Customer service roles are already being automated at scale. With AI systems handling increasingly complex customer interactions, data entry and basic administrative tasks are being eliminated rapidly as AI becomes better at processing and organizing information. Even some coding tasks, particularly routine programming and debugging, are being augmented or replaced by AI tools like GitHub Copilot, content writing, legal research, financial analysis, and medical diagnosis are all areas where AI is becoming increasingly capable. But here's what's important to understand. This doesn't necessarily mean that all of these jobs will disappear. In many cases, AI will augment human capabilities rather than replace them entirely. The lawyers who learn to use AI for research will be more productive than those who don't. The doctors who use AI for diagnosis will be able to see more patients and catch more potential problems. At the same time, entirely new categories of jobs are being created. AI trainers who specialize in improving model performance, prompt engineers who know how to get the best results from AI systems, AI ethics specialists who ensure that AI systems are deployed responsibly, and human-AI collaboration managers who optimize workflows that combine human and artificial intelligence. The key insight is that the workers and companies that adapt quickly to these changes will capture disproportionate benefits, while those that resist or ignore AI will find themselves at an increasing disadvantage. This isn't just about individual career choices. This is about which companies, industries, and even countries will be competitive in an AI-driven economy. What concerns me is that this transformation is happening faster than our educational systems, social safety nets, and policy frameworks can adapt. We're essentially conducting a massive experiment on the global economy, and we don't fully understand what the results will be. The companies that figure out how to use AI effectively will see dramatic improvements in productivity and profitability. The companies that don't will find themselves competing against organizations that can operate with fundamentally different cost structures and capabilities. This could lead to unprecedented levels of economic inequality between AI-enabled and non-AI-enabled organizations, As OpenAI and other AI companies become more powerful and influential, they're inevitably going to face increased regulatory scrutiny. The question isn't whether AI regulation is coming, but what form it will take and how it will affect the development and deployment of AI systems. The European Union has already passed the AI Act, which will take effect in 2025. This regulation classifies AI systems according to risk levels and imposes significant requirements for transparency, testing, and accountability. Companies that violate these requirements could face fines of up to 6% of their global annual revenue, which for a company like OpenAI could mean billions of dollars in penalties. The United States has taken a more fragmented approach, with executive orders and state-level initiatives rather than comprehensive federal legislation. California is considering SB 1001, which would require companies to conduct safety testing before deploying advanced AI systems. The focus has been primarily on transparency and accountability rather than prescriptive restrictions on AI development. China has implemented some of the strictest AI regulations in the world, requiring government approval before launching generative AI services and imposing significant restrictions on AI-generated content. This creates an interesting dynamic where Chinese AI companies may be constrained by regulation, while American companies operate in a more permissive environment. What's fascinating about this regulatory landscape is how it's affecting the competitive dynamics between countries and companies. Regulation can serve as both a constraint and a competitive advantage. Companies that learn to operate effectively within regulatory frameworks may find themselves with advantages in markets where compliance is required. But regulation also creates risks for companies like OpenAI that are moving quickly and prioritizing growth over compliance. If they build their entire business model around approaches that later become regulated or prohibited, they could face existential challenges. My prediction is that we're going to see increasingly sophisticated and comprehensive AI regulation over the next few years, and companies that prepare for this regulatory environment will have significant advantages over those that don't. This is another area where OpenAI's rapid expansion strategy carries risks as well as rewards. Behind all of the business strategy and market dynamics, there are fundamental technical challenges that could determine whether OpenAI's ambitious plans are actually achievable. These challenges aren't just engineering problems. They're questions about the fundamental scalability and sustainability of current AI approaches. The compute costs for training advanced AI models are growing exponentially. Training GPT-4 reportedly cost around $100 million, and estimates for GPT-5 range from several hundred million to over $1 billion. These costs aren't just about money. They're about access to the specialized hardware and infrastructure required to train these models. The energy consumption is equally challenging. Training large AI models requires enormous amounts of electricity, and running them at scale consumes even more. Some estimates suggest that if AI adoption continues at current rates, AI systems could consume several percent of global electricity production by 2030. This raises serious questions about sustainability and environmental impact. There are also scaling challenges related to data and model architecture. The improvements we've seen in AI capabilities have largely come from scaling up models and training them on more data. But we may be approaching limits in terms of the amount of high-quality text data available for training, and it's not clear that simply making models bigger will continue to yield proportional improvements in capability. The alignment problem, which is how to ensure that AI systems do what humans actually want them to do, becomes more challenging as models become more powerful. Current approaches to AI alignment work reasonably well for systems with limited capabilities, but they may not scale to systems that are capable of sophisticated reasoning and planning. These technical challenges create both risks and opportunities for OpenAI. If they can solve these problems more effectively than their competitors, they could build sustainable competitive advantages. But if these problems prove to be fundamental limitations of current AI approaches, the entire industry could face a period of slower progress and reduced expectations. What's particularly interesting is how these technical challenges interact with OpenAI's business strategy. Their rapid expansion into applications and enterprise markets creates pressure to deliver consistent, reliable performance from their AI systems. But the cutting-edge research required to solve fundamental technical problems often involves exploring approaches that are experimental and potentially unstable. This tension between commercial demands and research requirements is something that every AI company faces, but it's particularly acute for OpenAI given their market position and the expectations that come with their $500 billion valuation. To understand where all of this is heading, it's useful to look at specific examples of how organizations are actually using OpenAI's technology and what results they're achieving. These case studies reveal both the potential and the limitations of current AI systems. Morgan Stanley has been using GPT technology to assist their financial advisors in research and client communication. They've reported a 15% increase in advisor productivity, with advisors able to handle more clients and provide more comprehensive analysis. However, they've also had to implement extensive oversight and verification processes to ensure accuracy in financial advice, which limits some of the efficiency gains. Shopify has deployed AI-powered customer service systems that have reduced response times by 30% and improved customer satisfaction scores, but they've found that complex customer issues still require human intervention, and they've had to carefully design handoff processes between AI and human agents to maintain service quality. GitHub Copilot, which is based on OpenAI's Codes technology, has been particularly successful. Recent studies suggest that approximately 30% of code in popular programming languages is now being generated by AI, and developer satisfaction rates are consistently above 85%. This success has convinced many organizations that AI-assisted coding is not just a productivity enhancement, but a fundamental shift in how software is developed. But these case studies also reveal important limitations. AI systems work best when they're focused on specific, well-defined tasks with clear success criteria. They struggle with ambiguous situations, complex reasoning that requires multiple steps, and tasks that require deep contextual understanding or emotional intelligence. The most successful implementations have been those that treat AI as a tool for augmenting human capabilities rather than replacing human judgment entirely. Organizations that have tried to fully automate complex processes have generally been disappointed with the results. What's emerging from these real-world deployments is a clearer picture of where AI adds the most value and where human oversight remains essential. This understanding is crucial for organizations that are deciding how to integrate AI into their operations and for investors who are trying to evaluate the true potential of AI companies like OpenAI. The pattern that's emerging is that AI is most valuable when it can handle routine tasks that require intelligence but not creativity or judgment, when it can process large amounts of information quickly and accurately, and when it can serve as a starting point for human decision-making rather than making final decisions independently. Based on everything we've discussed, I think there are several possible scenarios for how OpenAI's story could unfold over the next few years, and understanding these scenarios is crucial for anyone who wants to prepare for the future. In the optimistic scenario, OpenAI successfully scales their technology and applications to serve hundreds of millions of users, while solving the safety and alignment challenges that currently limit AI deployment. They go public in what becomes the largest technology IPO in history, validating their $500 billion valuation and creating enormous value for employees, investors, and society. AI-powered productivity improvements drive significant economic growth, and new job categories emerge to replace those that are automated. OpenAI becomes one of the most valuable companies in the world, alongside Microsoft, Google, and Apple. In the pessimistic scenario, OpenAI's rapid expansion leads to significant safety incidents that result in regulatory backlash and public distrust of AI technology. Technical limitations prevent them from achieving the performance improvements that their valuation assumes, and competition from other companies erodes their market position. The AI bubble bursts, leading to massive write-downs for investors and a period of reduced investment in AI research and development. OpenAI either fails entirely or becomes a much smaller, more specialized company. The most likely scenario is probably somewhere in between. OpenAI continues to make progress on their technology and applications, but faces increasing competition and regulatory challenges. They successfully go public, but at a lower valuation than current expectations. AI technology continues to improve and find new applications, but the pace of change is slower than the most optimistic predictions. Some jobs are automated, but new categories of work emerge. The economic benefits of AI are significant but unevenly distributed. What's important to understand is that which scenario we end up in depends not just on OpenAI's decisions, but on how society responds to the challenges and opportunities that AI creates. Regulatory frameworks, educational systems, social safety nets, and cultural attitudes toward technology will all play important roles in determining whether AI development leads to broadly shared prosperity or increased inequality and instability. What we're witnessing with OpenAI isn't just the rise of another technology company. We're watching the emergence of what could become the defining technology platform of the next several decades. The decisions that OpenAI makes over the next few years and how society responds to those decisions will shape the future of work, economics, and human-machine interaction. The two-pronged empire that OpenAI is building, with consumer applications on one side and enterprise solutions on the other, positions them to capture value across the entire AI ecosystem, with Fujisimo running their applications organization like a CEO within the company, and with billion-dollar acquisitions providing them with the talent and technology they need. OpenAI is positioned to challenge even the largest technology companies. But this expansion comes with enormous risks. The safety challenges they're facing aren't just public relations problems. They're fundamental questions about whether powerful AI systems can be deployed responsibly at scale. The technical challenges around compute costs, energy consumption, and AI alignment could limit their ability to deliver on their ambitious promises. And the regulatory environment is evolving rapidly in ways that could constrain their business model. For individuals, the key insight is that AI literacy is becoming as important as computer literacy was in the 1990s. The people who learn to use AI tools effectively will have significant advantages in their careers, while those who ignore or resist AI will find themselves at a growing disadvantage. For organizations, the challenge is to develop strategies for integrating AI that enhance human capabilities rather than simply replacing human workers. The companies that figure out how to combine human judgment with AI efficiency will be the ones that thrive in an AI-driven economy. For society as a whole, we need to start having serious conversations about how to ensure that the benefits of AI are broadly shared rather than concentrated among a small number of companies and individuals. This includes questions about education, social safety nets, regulation, and economic policy. The next 6 months will be crucial for OpenAI. They'll likely announce more enterprise offerings. We'll see how their relationship with Microsoft evolves, and GPT-5 will probably launch with capabilities that are dramatically better than current systems. Within 1 to 2 years, we'll probably see an OpenAI IPO that could be the largest in technology history, and we'll start to see direct competition between OpenAI and Microsoft in enterprise markets. Looking 5 years ahead, I believe AI will fundamentally transform how we work and live. OpenAI could become one of the most valuable companies in the world, or they could collapse under the weight of their own ambitions and the challenges they're facing. What's certain is that the decisions being made today will determine whether that transformation benefits everyone or just a fortunate few. The question that each of us needs to answer is, how are we preparing for a future where artificial intelligence isn't just a tool, but a fundamental part of how our economy and society operate? Because that future isn't coming someday, it's arriving right now, and the companies, individuals, and societies that prepare for it will be the ones that prosper in the age of AI.